You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Gerasimos Stylianessis.
All right, everybody, welcome to episode 16 of Here for the Truth. Today, we have a special guest, Doris Osman. Some of you may know her on Instagram at Be Free with D. Doris has gone from being a full-time professional soccer player, playing professionally overseas in Italy, and has made the transformation to a full-time fighter for our rights and our freedom. Ever since she discovered the deep-rooted corruption in our country and in the world in general, realizing we have all been enslaved since birth, it's become Doris's mission to expose this and provide solutions for those who are seeking answers and a way out. Knowledge really is power. Now, for those that may not know, Doris and I are both located in and around Sydney. We're currently in week 5 or 6, I don't know what it is, of a stage 4 lockdown. This is totalitarian beyond any degree whatsoever. All small businesses are shut. Construction sites are shut. I'm getting nearly arrested for sitting at the park with a cucumber. There's helicopters circulating Sydney, telling people to go inside and stop playing basketball in parks. Otherwise, cops are coming. It is ridiculous. Doris, what the fuck is going on and what can we do about it?
Oh man, this is what I've been asking myself for a few months now.
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't know if you've seen. I've spoken about the Magna Carta a few times. Have you seen that on my page?
I've seen a little bit, but let's get into that. I think that's probably a good place to start. I think the best place to start is, what is the Magna Carta and why is it so important?
So the Magna Carta is pretty much the king of all constitutions. And in 1215, there was a really tyrannical leader, King John, I think it was. And he was doing all sorts of things like taking over people's lands, killing people, and the people had enough. And so what they did was they rounded him up and they got him to sign the Magna Carta, which was to prevent any future leaders from being too tyrannical. And so the barons were in charge of this as well. They were like the head people who sort of the overseers of the Magna Carta. Mm-hmm. And there's a specific clause, Article 61, which you invoke if any government, any leader is tyrannical. And in 2013, they invoked it in the UK. And the barons invoked it because there was a bill that was being passed that was allowing foreign entities to have control over the country. And so they invoked it and they petitioned the Queen, and she responded stating that she had been usurped, which means taken over.
Wow.
And then ever since then, it hasn't been completed, and you need to complete it. You need to, charge the necessary people for committing treason. And treason is the worst crime ever because it means that you're pretty much destroying a whole nation of people. And we fall under that because this Magna Carta was signed for all Commonwealth countries and ex-Commonwealth countries. Mm-hmm. So I think the US and Canada fall under it as well. And what I realized when I was looking into this was that we actually are not we don't have we think we're a democratic country. We think that we have freedom of choice, and like we believe that by voting that we're a democracy, but that doesn't mean anything. We don't have anyone regulating the government, and part of the Magna Carta is that you need to have a jury of the peers, and a jury of the peers is the people who regulate and oversee what the government is doing. Mm-hmm. And they are capable of nullifying any laws that are breaching human rights and are too tyrannical. We don't have that in place. So the government can do whatever it wants essentially, and they're above us completely, and the people need to be above them to stop that from happening, because we created the government to serve us, and it's somehow been twisted and turned around, and now they're completely controlling us and taking advantage of us. And as you can see, what's happening today.
Yep.
So yeah, so when I discovered this, and I discovered the founder, David Robinson, he studied the Magna Carta for 20 years, and he actually used it successfully. In the UK, he was able to get out of paying council fees and all sorts of things, because that is considered treason, making people pay for natural resources, for example. There's so much that is happening that we don't even realize that is so wrong. And obviously that comes with the indoctrination, and when we're born, we're just programmed from the beginning to not even realize and notice these sort of things that are going on, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
Well, so Article 61 has been invoked, and what you do is you swear an oath under Article 61, and then you send notices to the courts, the councils, and the cops, stating and providing evidence that treason has been committed, and that they have a duty to resolve this and restore rule of law. And then what you do is essentially you take over the main buildings, and you demand that the jury of the peers is restored, and that allows jury nullification and to sort of get rid of all of this. Yeah, that's pretty much to sum it up. Yeah.
So how can we use this today? And what's your role, and how do you pursue this in bringing people together to actually enact this? How do you think this can be tangibly placed or tangibly used in the real world today to help solve these problems that we're facing at the moment? Is it a matter of making everyone aware so we can assume responsibility of what is actually going on and invoke this, or?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm finding challenging at the moment, is that there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of misinformation around the Magna Carta. First of all, they say it was signed under duress, but all of these sorts of things are signed under some sort of pressure. But the guy didn't have a knife at his neck. They were threatening to kick him out as a leader, but when he signed it, he was kept in as the king. Still, he was still kept as the king to continue his leadership, but his rule. Sorry. So there are a lot of misinformation, and people who believe that the Pope actually changed the Magna Carta and got rid of Article 61. And the thing is that no one has the authority but the people to change the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is the people's law. It's common law. And so there's a lot of misconceptions and misinformation, and people believe that it has no effect or standing today, in today's day and age, as well as in our country. That's another thing that I have to try and fight against.
Yeah, well, I understand that, because I mean, like, I didn't know about it, right? And at times you can feel incredibly powerless, thinking that these people are just doing what they're doing, and there's no solutions, and there's no constitutional leg for us to stand on. But how are they able to just continually, I guess, usurp this? You know what I mean? Like, where do we go from here to actually reenact this power? Is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was invoked, and when Article 61 was invoked, that means that is the only law in effect, and nothing else applies until that is sorted in a way to explain it the most simplest way. And so everything else that's going on, and even all these acts and statutes that have been passed through, they're all unlawful. They're all unlawful. And the best way is for the people to unite and essentially take over the main buildings, the courthouses. Those are ours. They're not the government's. The courthouses are for us. And just stay in there for days if we have to, and demand a jury of the peers to nullify and restore rule of law. And rule of law is common law, and it's getting rid of all these corporations and all these things happening under our noses that we didn't even realize. All the treason that's been committed. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, no, definitely answered the question. So let's do it. Let's get to the courthouse.
It might take a little while for me to get to Australia.
That's all right, bro. We'll wait. You might have to get some magic juice to get here, though.
No fucking way.
Protesting is like the protest that happened a week ago. I mean, it was amazing in the way that it made a statement that there are so many of us against this. And, it was beautiful to unite with others who are like-minded. But at the end of the day, what did it achieve in terms of changing the situation? We just returned home back to our nightmare,
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to do make another big statement, this time it should really do something, and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. But it seems as though there's always a line that people aren't willing to cross, right? Like you go to these protests, you see people get arrested, everyone just walks away, backs away. You know what I mean? It's almost like the police are still controlling these protests. It's almost as though we're still walking within their lines and their jurisdiction to an extent. You know what I mean? People are there for the moment and for the hype, but then where do they go from there? Because this tiptoe is happening. Control is being continually taken further and further. While we're just sitting here as sitting ducks, basically doing nothing. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about a virus which is virtually non-existent, and I'm not allowed to sit at the park with my family, right, without being harassed. When the cops came that day, I began to walk away. This guy literally grabbed me. He grabbed me. Right. This is completely illegal. I go, I'm not under any criminal investigation whatsoever. So you have to give me your name and your address, or you're under arrest. Right. That would have been an incredibly unlawful arrest. But what am I going to do? I'm not going to let my 2-year-old daughter see me get arrested and traumatize her in that manner. You know what I mean? But these people just have they got no understanding of the law. They're all on a power trip, and I'm just like, where the hell do we go from here? Like, who do we complain to? How do we actually unite everybody to do something about this? What other solutions do you have for people at this time? Because we're seeing police infringe on people's personal boundaries beyond anything imaginable. People, they're trespassing into properties now. There's just no consideration whatsoever for anything, and it's beyond any rationality, right? You can't expect rationality from these people at the moment. What are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, it's really scary because we're seeing these guys step outside of their authority and their jurisdiction and do things that are totally unlawful. I mean, I had the other day, I was approached for not wearing a mask. Anyways, long story short, the guy proceeded to tell me, this is a law enforcement, like this is the police. They're meant to enforce the law. They're meant to know the law.
Yeah.
And he said to me, the public health order overrides the Constitution. And I was like, this is very, very worrying, because if these people are walking around thinking that these public health orders are the concept of our society now and override the Constitution, which is our very basis for all our laws, and and it's very worrying. And I looked at him and I said, nothing overrides the Constitution. Like, I couldn't believe it. But
and this guy basically reiterated the same thing to me. I go, it's not the law. He goes, it is the law. He goes, they changed the law 2 days ago. But like, if our police are so uneducated, like how are you supposed to negotiate from any place of practicality or reality? Because the law is the reality. But if they don't know the reality and they're acting from this fantasy world, like, it's like, what do you even do?
I was
scary. And the best advice I could give is to know your rights and
Yeah.
know what to say, because regardless, you may be arrested just for standing up for yourself, but the best thing you can do is have that evidence of you know, stating that you don't consent and explaining that, you know, they don't have authority. And so when it goes further to court, you're protected, you haven't incriminated yourself.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
definitely.
It's getting to a point where it's unavoidable to not have a fine or not, you know, be charged for something, because they have no idea what they're doing and they think they have all this authority. And we're just going to have to deal with it in court and set a precedent. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. My wife was filming the altercation, carrying my newborn baby, and he goes, "Keep filming. I'm coming for you next," while she's holding a baby. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh my God.
I love what you said, because I was having a conversation with Paul Enslaved at the Music and Sky Festival, and he says until people are willing to push papers, like by saying pushing papers, I mean like go into court, get people's names, knowing the law, you know, suing people, whatever the, you know, language is. This is an area that I've gotten too well versed in. Like I know basic elements of the law, but it's something that I want to learn more of. But going to a protest and everything is great, like you said, but are people willing to one, educate themselves, and then two, start pushing those papers, you know, suing people and taking their names, writing their name down. You know, I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. And that, like, you really need to be cautious of what you're saying to them. And, you know, they ask you questions to incriminate yourself. And the idea is to throw the questions back on them, but not to be disrespectful or belligerent. And just be like, okay, I'll comply, but can you just answer this for me, you know? And you throw it back on them, and you sort of get them to realize what they're doing is wrong. You ask them, so where is your authority to ask me this? Can you show that to me? I'm happy to do it, but I first would like to see your authority. And so you lead them down a path where it's like they can't prove that what they're doing is okay. And, you know, and if they were to like arrest you or do something, it's like, well, you haven't incriminated yourself, and you know, if anything, you've proven that this guy has no idea what he's talking about, what he's doing. And I think people are so scared of a fine or like of a charge or going to court that they're not sticking up for themselves and their rights.
Well, everyone's level of comfortability everyone's level of comfortability is being pushed now, right? So it's almost like we're all being called to expand our knowledge in this area if we're actually going to move on to the next level, to have a chance at, I guess, usurping this tyrannical government or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But people are comfortable. People like not getting fines. People like not having to worry about the police rocking up at their house. And fair enough, right? But at the same time, it's like you can't expect rationality from these people anymore, and it's up to us. The responsibility and the onus has to fall on us at this point. And we've had blinders on the entire time, and they've just built this regime around us. And it's like, okay, what are you gonna do now, right? Literally the devil's at your door. What are you gonna do now?
Literally. And there are really good lawyers out there who are helping us, and they understand the law. They can see what's going on, and they find it. I've spoken to so many lawyers, and they can't believe what's going on, and the amount of laws that these guys are breaking and stepping out of jurisdiction. It's incredible. And so we can use this as an opportunity to set an example, you know. And to go even deeper, if you go with common law, and if you understand that acts and statutes apply to persons, which are corporations and trusts, and not living men and women, you don't even need a lawyer, because you don't need anyone to represent you in the court. You come as a living man or woman. So that's a little bit deep. I don't know if you know much about that stuff. Have you looked into that?
Yeah, a little bit. This links into like maritime law and birth certificates and whatnot. I have looked into. How far have you gone down that rabbit hole? Have you represented yourself in court as a living woman yet?
Well, I'm actually going to be doing that soon. So we'll see how we go.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been researching all of it and looking into it, and I actually went yesterday to the RMS,
Yeah.
and I did something to my driver's license. I changed my driver's license, and I signed under my signature, I've written all rights reserved, and that means that you reserve all your rights as a living man or woman. And so if you don't write that, it means that you've contracted to all their rules, their driving rules. So yeah, that's interesting. And I managed to do that yesterday. So I can use that in court and show the judge and say, look, there's a problem here. And they'll know exactly what you're talking about when they see that. They know the game. They know the game, and this is all a game. It's like a game of chess. I don't know. It's crazy.
It's an act.
So,
We're on a stage, and they're all actors, and there's a big veil which we can't see, right? And this veil is what's holding this all together. Yeah. Are you able to speak a little bit on your views on like maritime law and birth certificates and us being treated as corporations?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that we created the government to serve us. And so being the creation of man can never be above man. And so the way that the government has been able to have authority over us is by turning us into corporations and legal fictions with our birth certificate. So the something happens when you're born and you get that birth certificate. The way it's signed and the legal jargon on there is actually creating a twin, essentially. Your twin, that's a corporation.
Yeah.
And from then on, they're no longer dealing with you as a living man or woman. They're actually joindering to that that dead entity to your, I don't know, your driver's license, your passport, your Medicare card, your bank accounts. And they're not dealing with you anymore. They're dealing with a legal fiction, a corporation.
Yeah.
And that's where like I mentioned earlier, acts and statutes apply to, but not living men and women. And so if you look at all acts and statutes and laws, they're always written with applying to persons. And if you look at Black's Law Dictionary, the meaning or definition of a person is a corporation, a trust, or legal fiction. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, and that's all maritime law. Like, I mean, when you get a citizenship is they're taking you by boat, by ship out to sea, and they've joined you and created this like other identity. So there's all these words and we don't actually understand the definitions of these words. Like, understand, if when a police officer says to you, do you understand? What that means is, do you stand under me? And you're straight away, if you say, yes, I understand, you're straight away contracting with them and consenting to the terms and the conditions of the contract, because this is all contracts. It's all we're always contracting now, based on like maritime law.
Yeah. And
It's really deep.
we've been conned through the language which they've taught us, right? And which we've adopted. It's a bit of a trip to go on.
It's really deep. Sure. I've dabbled in this, and I have friends of mine that go into this, but I have not gone down the rabbit hole. And I feel like it's like the next step to really understand.
It's time, man. I know, especially here, man, the pressure's turned up, and it's time. And this is something that I implore everyone to dive deeper into, definitely. So if, all right, for example, now we say someone gets a fine, an infringement for breaching whatever public health order there is. What's your solutions? Is it to actually take that to court, or do we just ignore that because it's not legal?
All right, so this gets interesting. If I didn't come across the Magna Carta, I would have said take it to court, and I would say no. So I would say to send them notices to prove their authority over you as a living man or woman. Okay, so there's like a process where you go through, you send 3 notices, and sometimes they work, sometimes they continue to fight it, and you will need to end up in court to fight it in there. And there are people who have won It's just a lot of time and energy because they make it so hard for us. They really do. However, coming across the Magna Carta, Article 61, using their courts, entering their courts and entertaining anything that they have, any of their contracts, is considered aiding and abetting the treason. So the part of the Article 61, it states you are not to go into their courts because you're contributing and you're playing the game. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the goal is to just send them notices that I stand under Article, like the way you get around is you send notices saying, yeah, I stand under Article 61, and the court is treasonous in the way it's set up. So I cannot enter that court until it's restored, until the rule of law is restored. So it's pretty much the Article 61 stops all bullshit. It's like, we're not playing this game. We're restoring rule of law, and we will not enter unless it is not maritime jurisdiction. It's for the people. It's common law. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense.
So I'm still learning about Magna Carta. There's so much to go through. I mean, it was put together in 1215, so that's a lot of history to go through. And there are people who know more about it who I'm constantly talking to and asking questions. And so this is something they're very passionate about, is not to entertain the system and aid and abet the treason. And just put a stop to it, send them your notice, and but it's very hard because they're acting like they don't recognize it.
All right, so check this out. So you're a conventional Pisces, right? But just esoterically, well, in reality, the sun was actually in Aries at the time of your birth, and your rising sign is what's opposite Aries. So your rising sign is actually your core personality, your core temperament. It's the means by which you achieve the destiny. So your rising sign is the constellation that was actually visible in the sky when you were born, and that was Libra, okay? And Libra is represented by the tarot card Justice. So this is Lady Justice. This is truth, honor, integrity, fairness in law, right? So this is by no coincidence what you're here to do and what you're called to serve at this point in time.
That is crazy. What the hell?
Yeah, dude. There's no coincidences. This is you. This is your individuality. This is your makeup. This is your destiny that you're stepping into. This is your authentic path that you found by yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. That was awesome. That was
welcome.
Awesome, man. I'm so curious. Speaking of that path, what brought you to this place?
Yeah.
Because you were a professional athlete.
Yeah, I was.
So how did you go from professional athletics, playing football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, depending where you are in the world, and now to freedom fighting?
All right. Well, where do I begin? I mean, when I was younger, I used to look at our lives, and I was a curious kid, and I used to think, is this what life is about? Like, I used to see my parents and everyone else, work their butts off. And I actually, I remember being young and thinking how sad it was that, we'd go to school, we'd go to uni or TAFE, and then we spend all these years, in the program of learning and having to, wake up early in this routine. And then when we finish that, we go to work and we spend most of those years, paying off a house until we're 60, 65. And we can finally retire, but we're too old and withered away to even enjoy the pleasures of life. So I always thought that this is really depressing. Like, is this what life's about? And I remember back then I used to research and look up things, and I came across David Icke. I don't know if you guys know him. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've heard of him.
And a lot of the things that he said really resonated with me, even though, some of it was a bit full on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I always kind of had at the back of my mind that, things weren't, this shouldn't be how life shouldn't be like this, and anyway, so I followed my football career, and I was in Italy at the time when when this so-called pandemic happened. And I was like right in the heart of it, with Italy being like one of the worst countries. And they stopped us from playing, and the country was going into lockdown. And I thought, something's not right here. And something did not feel right. And I remember when I was hearing that it was going into lockdown, I booked my ticket that same day. Within 4 hours, I was out of there, coming back to Australia. And I was obviously on house arrest for 2 weeks, quarantining. And in those 2 weeks, I just did some intense research, and I realized what was going on. I was aware there was an agenda to enslave humanity, but I just never thought it would be in my lifetime. I always believed it would be down the track. I always knew there were prominent individuals, wealthy individuals, who were controlling the world's wealth and resources and finances and media. I was always aware of that, but I knew that it was happening now. And and then that's when I couldn't understand when they were telling us to stay in our houses and suffocate ourselves, and we had to somehow comply against our will. I couldn't comprehend that. I thought, how is that? How can you make someone do that? And so I started to really delve deeper, and then that's when I came across common law, the birth certificates, and how we're actually enslaved. And here I am now.
Wow.
Yeah.
What role do you think the athletes play? Because you see this, all over the media. Some athletes are speaking out and they're like, I got to delete my tweet now, I'm getting backlash. Like, to what degree do you think, people in the public eye need to step up? But a lot of people are risking their careers, especially around this whole, pharma magic juice issue, vaccination. Like, what are your thoughts on that, on people who are in the public eye, and what role they should play, and et cetera?
I think if you are aware of what's going on, you have a responsibility, a duty for humanity, being someone who is looked up to speak up and have some integrity. Because if you're just complying, and even worse, if you are, being a promoter to this, you are contributing to enslaving humanity. And that's some serious, heavy karma on your behalf. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if these people know what's going on and they're afraid, or if they've sold their souls, like, so to speak, and they're part of those elite who are doing all of this. I don't know, but yeah, I think that they have a duty as people who are looked up to speak out. And personally, I would rather lose my followers and lose my promoters or sponsors than being part of enslaving in humanity. And if I was in a position to make a difference and help others and possibly save people, I would. It's totally worth it over money and fame. And that comes down to whether that individual has integrity or not, and where their principles lie.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you thought about during the Euros recently, when Ronaldo showed up to the press conference and took the Coca-Cola bottles and just like moved them away and said agua. Like,
I have so much respect for that guy. I used to think he was really cocky.
Yeah,
He
no,
had
same
a bit of
here.
ego. But he even tweeted like a year ago, PCI is bullshit, and then they made him delete it. So I have a lot of respect for anyone who stands up to this, and I that made me so happy to see that, especially.
I've seen him in a few photos too, where everyone's wearing a mask and he's not wearing one. He's just like so. But I agree with you. I thought he was had a little bit of an ego and this was cocky, and he probably still does, but it doesn't mean people with egos and cockiness can't stand up for certain values and have integrity in certain ways. So I thought that was pretty awesome. And then by him doing that, someone the next day did the same exact thing. So, I think when more people, have courage, it inspires other people to be courageous. And I think the more of us that do that by speaking out and standing our ground, it's just gonna spread like wildfire, and there will be the tipping point. And I think we're getting close to it in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people look up to these guys, and if you're out there promoting a vaccine, or promoting any of this, I just think it's really misguiding and dangerous, because people look up to them, and I don't know, there's like some sort of idol worship going on too, which is, I think we need to deal with that as well. But yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question of morality, right? And like obviously we all know what the moral thing to do is, and obviously you have your moral compass intact, and the three of us do. But I guess when you get to these different statures or levels of, you know what I mean, heightened public awareness or whatnot, I mean, what did you do to get there? And for what reason isn't your moral compass now skewed enough to encourage someone to take experimental drugs, which you have no idea about, that are still in clinical trials, and you know what I mean, are killing thousands of people every single week? Like, who can do that? How could you possibly? You mean? Yeah, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. And like you said, I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime either. I've been aware of the agenda for a long time, but this has accelerated far quicker than I think anything any of us could have imagined, right? I remember reading about Agenda 2021, 2030, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I was warning people, and yeah, I believed it. But the fact that we're now actually here in 2021, and this is the actual case of reality on Earth at this point in time, it's tough to comprehend. It's a big pill to swallow. There's no doubt about that.
Especially going from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to medical segregation and restaurants here, all over the world probably, but I can only speak on for here in the U.S. But like, we're only going to serve vaccinated customers. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing, the level of mind control and programming and behavior modification that has occurred in the last 16 months. Because for those of us, we're talking about vaccine passports, not just last year, but even before that, and we were looked at like being crazy individuals that have lost their minds, and yet here we are. It's mind blowing.
I know, right? I mean, I wish I was wrong.
Oh yeah, same here.
I wish I was crazy. Like, I really do. I wish this wasn't real, but we're being proven right as time goes on, and it's like, wake up before it's too late.
Yeah. One of the big things that I'm hearing from so many people, especially around the vaccine, is that there are people who are reluctant and hesitant, but because of convenience, they're choosing to get it, or because of their family, because of their partners, because of their job. I'm curious, in your situation, like standing up and speaking out, and having integrity around this issue and other issues, what have you found in your personal life, with people in your life, family, parents, other football players in your team? Like, what has been the feedback? Have you lost friends? Have people like secretly been like, yeah, I'm on the same page as you, but I just can't really speak out like you can? Like, I'm just curious, how is this whole thing, and you stepping, let's say, more into your power, whatever you want to call it, how has that impacted your life and your relationships?
Oh man, it's been tough, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. When I first started speaking out last year in March, people were just they were questioning my sanity. I had really good friends ringing me and saying, "Are you okay?" And yeah, it's come to the point where these people think I'm a danger to society. I'm unselfish. I'm ignorant. And so I've lost friendships, family members also who don't agree. They don't, obviously, they don't speak to me anymore. But you get the others who, and a lot of the people who are aware of what's going on as well and agree, they're kind of in the shadows because they're afraid of being, treated that way and shamed and labeled all these things. And they are silently, supporting me. But I've come to a point where I've started to say to these people, you need to speak up too, because that could encourage others and get others to question it. Because if there's just only me and a small number of people doing that, we're the minority to them. And it's like, it's not it's not a trend. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it's been very tough, and I've gone on a really deep spiritual journey in, I feel as though I no longer care what people think of me anymore, because I've had to deal with people thinking very low and badly of me. And that's been, as difficult as it has been, it's been very freeing. And I suppose, like, until you care what others think of you, they will control your behaviors, if that makes sense. So it's, yeah, I feel so free in that aspect that I don't care. And because I know the truth and I am standing in my truth, I cannot stay silent knowing what I know. To me, that's just impossible. I mean, yeah. So it is what it is. And I know one day, well, I hope one day, these people will see where I was coming from, and realize that my intentions were always good and pure. And if they don't see that now, that's fine. I mean, that doesn't bother me. That's not going to change my behaviors, and I'm going to still keep doing what I'm doing and you know, trying to help humanity, you know.
I do.
Yeah. So yeah.
Have you, this is a conversation I've been having with so many people. My wife and I, we've been having gatherings at our home for, you know, the last however many months. And I'm meeting new people, and I have this instant connection because we align on this issue. And I find that it's such a deep connection and like love with some of these people that I've known for a few months. And there are people in my life that I've known for 10, 15, 20 years that, yeah, there may be this heart connection there, but it's almost like this weird feeling of like, I don't even want to spend time with you anymore. But then these new people where we're aligned on such core values, it's just, I don't know, these relationships that are blossoming over the last 16 months have just been incredible. And I'm curious if you've experienced that as well.
I have. I totally relate to that. I have friends or friendships now and people in my life now that I'm connecting with at such an incredible level that I've never connected with anyone before, you know, and it is because of what you said, where we're aligned in our beliefs, in our morals, and our intentions are the same. And that is so powerful. And it's so beautiful. And I even was saying, you know, despite how messed up this all is and how traumatic it may be, I'm actually really grateful for these connections and these beautiful things that are happening along the way. And it's you got to look at it. Yeah,
it's really special, and that's the silver lining. I don't think this podcast would have happened. I don't think Joel and I would have connected and have had the desire to create something like this if it wasn't for everything that was going down. And even people in my community here in California, such incredible people I've connected with that I don't think I would have if this event didn't, let's say, force us to really look deep down within and have a dialogue with ourselves about who we are and what do we stand for. I'm in the holistic community, you know, as a holistic health practitioner and other things that I'm involved in. And, you know, there are other practitioners who I would assume would be connected to this deep spiritual connection and connection to nature. And yet they're not. They're lining up for the jab. They're telling their clients to get the jab. And it's like, so you're spiritual and connected to nature on paper, but in reality, there's this disconnection that just feels so obvious. And I just, again, I find that I find it interesting that it's like this event, what's happening these last however long, is really forcing people to come face to face with their true value and who they are and who they think they are and how they want to move forward. And so I'm so grateful for that. And it's been a blessing. And my relationships have grown even deeper because of it. So it's really cool to hear you say that. And why argue with reality? This is what's happening.
Yeah.
And so what are we going to do about it?
That's the thing, right, man? That's the hardest part is, you mean, trying to, I guess, realize that you can't really argue with it and it is what's happening. But at the same time, it's made the line in the sand really, really, really clear. And we know where everyone stands, right? And there's something to be said about, because we're realizing now that aligning with other people on the core things, such as what we value, what we prioritize, morality, really is the deepest possible connection, as opposed to what we've been conditioned to spend 15, 20, 25 years with someone and realize there's no actual connection there. Yeah, man. No, I hear you, bro, and it's happened for all of us, and it's a very sobering time, but at the same time, it's forced more realness, more authenticity, more truth. Everyone's being squeezed, right? It's like a compression. And yeah, man, I'm grateful to be here at this time. At the end of the day, I mean, it fucking sucks having to deal with the cops.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine what you're dealing with in Australia. It's a whole nother level than we're here in the U.S. And I'm in California, which is a pretty crazy state with things going on. But I don't have cops knocking on my door 3 days in a row, so they'd have to find us first. So I don't know if that'd be difficult, but we'll see. We're a little far out.
Yeah,
Crazy times, huh?
definitely
Yeah,
crazy times.
but
So what's on the cards for you going forward from here? What are your plans to continue to pursue what it is that you feel you need to pursue?
Well, I think, and I've actually made this decision quite recently. I think I'm going to have to keep focusing on the Magna Carta
Yep.
and trying to educate others and get people prepared for call to action, which is taking over the buildings, the courthouses. Yeah, I think that is what I'm looking at, because I mean we had the protest and it was amazing, but we've seen we've seen the reaction, and I think they have put things in place to make it really difficult for us. And obviously people are worried about these fines, and I don't know, we just need to do something that's going to get a solution and have an effect,
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm always looking and researching, but so far the Magna Carta to me is the most necessary, and yeah, it makes sense more than
I'm so
anything.
curious. I'm really curious. So where is it that people can? Where would you recommend them to go to start diving into the Magna Carta to understand that on a deeper level?
There is a Facebook page. It's called Practical Lawful Dissent International, and then dash Australia. And on that page, there's all these files and documents where people can read about it and understand it better.
Yep.
I've have an interview with Jackie Phoenix. She's kind of leading the movement. And she knows all about it. And I interviewed her, and I have that on my Instagram and my Be Free with D page on Facebook.
Awesome.
I've also made a Telegram chat with all of those files that you find on the Facebook page for those who don't have Facebook. Yeah, so we're doing our best to make the information easy for everyone, but it comes down to the individual to take initiative and go and look that up. And
Yeah.
I think this is a big factor to what's going on. And we've given away our power and our responsibility to the government, and it's time to take that back. I think it's a big lesson for humanity, and we need to start, taking initiative and not relying on others. Because like I said, this is a war on information, and if you're not going to do the hard work in learning and educating yourself, you're going to be leaving yourself vulnerable to what is going on, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it makes sense, and that's the hardest thing is, people developing their own individual will and individual call to action, so they are self-motivated to go learn and go educate and step in their own power instead of consistently looking elsewhere, right, all the time. Because on some level, that savior program of always looking somewhere else for the solution to the answer is kind of why we're here in the first place. And that's the sleep that we've been lulled into over time, right? It's I mean, look, Australia is the best country in the world. Australia is so easy to live in. Everyone go live in Australia, right? And yes, it's a beautiful country, and I love living here. But you can see now why this stranglehold was able to take so easily here, because we are so complacent and we've been conditioned to just assume the best of our authority and the people that are supposedly looking out for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like in common law, the two most important and fundamental principles are, the first one being do not harm another or damage their property. And the second is take responsibility for yourself. And that's all it is, really. Like, we need to get back to that.
Yep.
We've been spoon-fed for too long, and we've given our power away and relying on others. It's just, and that's, I feel like this is a really big lesson with what's happening now. We're learning that, so yeah.
Definitely.
I think that's going to be our clip right there. That was right on point. That last little bit.
No, I love that. Yeah. All right.
It's so simple,
Yeah.
It's really so simple.
Oh yeah, it is. But it's
don't harm another or their property. Take responsibility. Okay, move on. Next.
Yeah. But we're just so obsessed with with living our life as to what we assumed was normal, right? As to, we just want to go to work, we just want to come home, we just want to watch TV, we just want to, not be bothered. But we're being fucking bothered.
We're being bothered. It's like that fly that doesn't go away, and now it's just keep coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, closing remarks to the people. What do you have?
Okay, closing remarks. Okay. Oh, man, I could say a lot, but look, I just want people to remember that fear is a weapon that's being used against us in this time. And to, stay strong and to have faith and to take responsibility for yourself. But also, remember that the division is being used against us as well. Mm-hmm. So understanding that, try not to fall into that tactic that they're using against us, and keep going, keep fighting. I believe that we can overcome this, and we need to unite and support one another during these times, and empower yourself with knowledge. And I think that's about it. What else can I say?
Perfectly said. We really appreciate your time here today. I think it's such an honorable cause that you've decided to take on, and you're going all the way with the Magna Carta, right? And no one else is really talking about this. No one else is really pointing that out, saying, look here, guys, right? There could be a solution here. So just super appreciative of everything that you shared, everything that you said, everything that you stand for. Where can people find you? Where should they go to reach out? What are your Telegram groups, Instagram names?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram as Be Free with D. D being 2 E's. I have a Facebook page, which is Be Free with D as well, but B space free space with space D.
Yep.
And I also have a Telegram group. It's called Solutions to Government Control. But I have links to that in my bio on my Telegram. On my Instagram and my Facebook page as well. So
awesome. We'll pop all those links in the show notes on the bottom of this episode, regardless. Thanks for being you, and thanks for being here for the truth. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you. Likewise. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. It's been a really beautiful podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for taking time out of your day from planning a coup on federal courthouses and finding time to speak with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll have what time is it where you are?
It's 4:45 p.m.
All right. Well, have a good evening.
Thank you so much. How's the
Thank you.
future? Tell me how the future is in Australia.
It's sunny.
It's
How's the
sunny.
next day? That always still trips me out, you know, when I think about Australia, is just like, you're in the future. It's so far. It's the next day. And I just love Australia so much. I spent 4 months there back in 2000, and I visited again in 2010. But I have such a love for Australia and the people there. So, you know, keep fighting. Don't let these psychopaths take control. And you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna win this at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Here for the Truth. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Take
Bye.
care.
Smoking mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time, they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean.